Hey, one thing the president kind of let out of the bag again. Maybe his handlers hadn't talked to him, but he was talking about Social Security. And he said, the Social Security checks are going out now, but if we don't raise the debt ceiling, they might not go out. Now, you would think the president would be a little nervous about letting the Social Security voters know how tenuous their so-called entitlements are. Because after all, why doesn't the president just say, nothing to worry about, you Social Security recipients. We got your money in that lockbox. It's all in the trust fund. No need to worry. If we can't borrow more money, we got you covered from the trust fund. We got you covered with these dedicated revenues from the payroll tax. You see, he's admitting that it's all part of the general revenue. And if the government can't borrow money, it can't pay anything, and it's got to start making cuts. And he's letting you know that if you're getting Social Security, well, your check is on the table, which I believe it should be on the table. Everything should be up on the table because the government is broke. But the politicians never want to admit that, right? Social Security is sacrosanct. That's your money. You earned it. You paid into the system. Don't worry about it, right? That's not the case. But the president basically says that. Although that's not the worst thing that the president said. I'm going to play a little sound for you. This is the president gave a speech in Rockville, Maryland yesterday. And, when you listen to what the president's about to say, there's only two things you can conclude. Either he's a liar or he's a moron, right? I mean, that's basically it. Either he's an idiot, he's stupid, he does, or he's just lying. Because there's really no room for anything in between. It's either one or the other. Because you can't say he's just being slick. He's just sugarcoating things. It's just, propaganda. No, it's an outright lie. If he knows the truth and he says the opposite of the truth, it's not politics. It's lying. And if he doesn't know something this simple, then it's his intelligence that you have to question. But decide for yourself, because he's talking about the debt ceiling and raising the debt ceiling and what it doesn't mean. I'll have you listen to it. It's cut number 17.
I want to spend a little time on this. It's something called raising the debt ceiling, and it's got a lousy name, so a lot of people end up thinking, I don't know, I don't think we should raise our debt ceiling because it sounds like we're raising our debt. But that's not what this is about. It doesn't cost taxpayers a single dime. It doesn't grow our deficits by a single dime. It doesn't allow anybody to spend any new money whatsoever. So it's not something that raises our debt. What it does is allow the U.S. Treasury, the U.S. government, to pay the bills that Congress has already racked.
So, in other words, raising the debt ceiling doesn't raise the debt. Of course it does, because the ceiling limits the debt. So the debt can only be as big as the ceiling. So right now the ceiling is $17 trillion. And if we don't raise the debt ceiling, the debt doesn't get any bigger than that. Now, if we raise the debt ceiling to $18 trillion, then the debt will be $18 trillion. And if we raise it to $19 trillion, then the debt will be $19 trillion. See, the president said, I don't like the name debt ceiling because it implies that the debt is getting bigger. It doesn't imply it. It means it. It allows the debt to get bigger. It's got nothing to do with paying our bills. It's about not paying our bills and running up big debt instead. See, again, if we don't raise the debt ceiling, we have to pay our bills. That's what paying our bills means. Not borrowing money, but actually paying the bills. Raising the debt ceiling means you don't pay the bills. You just throw them on the pile of unpaid bills, and the pile gets bigger and bigger and bigger because of the debt ceiling. To say that raising the debt ceiling doesn't cost taxpayers a dime is an outright lie. Of course, had we never raised the debt ceiling, right? What was the debt ceiling when Obama was first elected? Was it 9 trillion, 10 trillion? If we had never raised it, the debt would still be that low. We wouldn't have all this extra debt. When he says that raising the debt ceiling doesn't mean we have extra money to spend, of course it does. Because he's saying if we don't raise the debt ceiling, we can't pay this, we can't pay that, we can't pay all these things. Right. Because raising the debt ceiling gives the government all of that extra money to spend on all these things. And it's not just about paying for the promises it made in the past. It's about funding all the spending in the future. You see, the government can still meet a lot of its prior obligations, like interest on the money that we borrowed, if it cuts money out of the budget. Right? So what does raising the debt ceiling do? It means that the government doesn't have to cut spending on future expenditures. It doesn't have to cut its budget to pay for interest on the debt. See, so the president is lying. If the debt ceiling isn't raised, we can still pay, because when he's talking about paying for the commitments that we have in the past, he's talking about interest on the debt or principal on debt. We can still pay that even if the debt ceiling is left where it is. It's just that we'll have to cut spending on other things in the future in order to pay the commitments that we made in the past. But that's not what Obama wants to do. So he's saying, oh, don't worry, this isn't going to cost you anything, right? We're just going to raise the debt ceiling, and it doesn't mean there's going to be more debt. Of course, that's what it means. How can the president say this? More importantly, how can the mainstream media let the president get away with this? Because again, either he's lying about the debt ceiling, or he's doesn't even understand the concept of debt. He's completely clueless. He's got the intellect of a elementary school kid. Although probably most elementary school kids would figure this out, that if you have 17 trillion in debt, and now you go to 18 or 19 or 20 trillion, that you're adding to your debt, right? It's just basic mathematics that the president doesn't understand. Now, I don't think he's possibly that dumb, right? I give the president credit. He's not a moron. So he's got to be a liar. But the media, they've got to be the morons for not calling him out on this, for not being able to figure out that the commander-in-chief is standing in front of an American audience and lying through his teeth, lying to Americans to get them supporting an increase in the debt ceiling, basically by saying, don't worry, it won't cost you a nickel. Yeah, all the extra debt that we're going to accumulate because we increase the debt ceiling, yeah, it ain't going to cost you a nickel, which means the debt doesn't cost us a nickel. All the debt that we have, the trillions and trillions of dollars, it's all free, according to Barack Obama. It's like, trying to convince the credit card company, look, I know I want you to raise my credit card limit. I'm maxed out right now. And I want you to raise my limit up, but don't worry, I'm not going to spend any more money. I just want a higher limit. It's not, it's not going to let me spend any more money. The whole thing, it just really infuriates me that the president is held to such a low standard that he's allowed to lie pretty much with impunity. If lying were an impeachable offense, right? Couldn't we impeach him? Does the president have to be honest? Now, maybe, no, it's not perjury because he's not under oath. But I would think that the president of the United States, when speaking to the American people, has a duty to be honest. Maybe you could say if it's a national security situation and it has to do with, military or, intelligence secrets. Yeah, he doesn't have to divulge those. But he's trying to drum up support for legislation. And so he's lying to the public about what it means. This is not about opinion. If the president says this is good for the economy and it's bad for the economy, you can argue, well, that it's his opinion and he's entitled to an opinion. He's just not entitled to lie about the facts. And saying that raising the debt ceiling doesn't authorize additional spending is a lie. That's exactly what it does. Saying that raising the debt ceiling doesn't result in more debt is a lie, because that's exactly what it does. If we leave the ceiling in place, there can be no more debt. There can only be more debt if we raise the debt ceiling. So what part of that does the president not understand, right? We raise the debt ceiling, then we can have more debt. So how can you say that raising the debt ceiling doesn't lead to more debt when it is a prerequisite to more debt? We don't raise the ceiling, we can't have more debt. We do raise the ceiling, we can have more debt. What part of that basic formula does the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief of our armed forces, the leader of the free world. What part of that simple little equation does the president not understand? See, he must understand it, so he is lying. You know, he works for us. The president works for us. If your employee lies to you, that's a reason to terminate him, right? Your employees have to be honest. They can't lie to you. So why do we allow the president to lie to us? Also, Speaker of the House, John Boehner, was out saying today that under no circumstances will he allow the U.S. to default. Now, of course, raising the debt ceiling doesn't mean we default. See, we're only spending about $250 billion a year on interest right now. So we wouldn't have to default on any of those payments. The government collects 10 times that in taxes. So all the government would have to do is figure out what future spending not to fund, and then we'd have plenty of money to pay the interest on the national debt. But he is buying into the idea that not raising the debt ceiling automatically triggers default, which it doesn't do. In fact, there was a bill proposed by the Congress, somebody in Congress, that would officially prioritize paying interest on the debt so that they couldn't pay this game. They would have to say that we got to pay the bondholders first. We can't, hold them hostage. And so they could have passed that, and then it wouldn't even be an issue. But what Boehner is basically saying is that don't worry, we're going to raise the debt ceiling, even if I have to craft a bill that is supported mainly by the Democrats. This is what the leader of the Republican Party is saying. He's saying, even if I have to fight against my own party, right, the Libertarian Tea Party wing of the Republican Party that wants to use the debt ceiling to try to limit government spending and extract some significant cuts from Obama, what Boehner is saying is he's not willing to have that fight. And so he will raise the debt ceiling even if he does it mainly with Democratic support, which, is pretty dangerous. Because can you imagine the kind of debt ceiling increase that they're going to draft if it's going to be, supported by all the Democrats and just a small number of loyal Republicans who are loyal to the speaker? I mean, this is pretty bad stuff. Now, gold market hasn't figured it out. Gold's down $10 today. Maybe it would be up if they had been able to release the jobs data, which I'm sure would have been pretty bad. But all this stuff, what's ultimately going to be good for gold is not all the talk about not raising the debt ceiling or this talk about government shutdown. What's good for gold is starting all the government back up again and raising the debt ceiling. That's what's great for gold. Not the fact that we might not raise the debt ceiling, because that implies that maybe the debt won't grow. Maybe the government will get its act together. See, that would be negative for gold, theoretically, government being fiscally responsible, printing less money. The reckless course is raising the debt ceiling. The best thing for gold would be to abolish the debt ceiling completely, which, the debt ceiling exists in name only. So, why not abolish it? And again, the reason that the politicians don't want to abolish the debt ceiling is because they're a bunch of hypocrites. See, all of our leaders want to say they're against the debt. And so if there actually was a bill to eliminate the debt ceiling and somebody voted for that, well, then you would be on record as having voted for unlimited debt. So nobody wants to make a politically unpopular vote to abolish the debt ceiling completely. But that's effectively what they do when they raise the debt limit, the debt ceiling, every time they get to it. Because it's not a real ceiling if it's raised whenever you get there. Right? Like if your credit card company said, okay, we're going to give you a limit on your credit card. Your limit is $5,000. But you knew that whenever you got to your limit, you can just ask for an increase and they would automatically increase it every time. Well, then do you have a credit limit? No. If it's going to be increased every time you get there, there's no limit. But of course, no credit card company is going to be dumb enough to give you a credit card. And in fact, my analogy is a little bit wrong, because you raise your own limit. It's not like the credit card company. It's like if you had a credit card where your limit was $5,000, but you had the ability on your own every time you got to $5,000 to push a button and the limit would go up to $7,000 or $10,000, right? If you could raise your own limit anytime you got to it, would there be a limit? No. So it's a limit in name only. But the Republicans and Democrats, nobody will vote to remove a basically meaningless limit because of the wrong message it sends. So it's all a bunch of hypocrisy. They're going to increase the debt. They're going to raise the debt limit. Contrary to what the president says, it means more debt. And it's not just going to cost us a dime. It's going to cost us trillions. Joe is calling in from St. Louis, Missouri. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Schiff. If our president doesn't like the name debt ceiling, what would he call it? What would he
I don't know.
call
Well, I don't know. Is that a joke? Do you have the answer?
I have no clue what else you would call it. I mean, it is what it is. I guess what I'm really trying to say is I'm a truck driver. I didn't graduate high school. I got my GED, right? And I know exactly what's right and wrong when we are having a conversation on raising our debt. I have a family. I have a wife. We have credit cards. We watch what we put on them every month. At the end of the month, we pay them off. And if we don't have any money, we don't buy it. And I'm just a truck driver. I'm not a genius. I'm not even an accountant. I'm nobody.
Yeah, there was a Saturday Night Live skit way back when, about this concept of, don't buy what you can't afford. It was kind of funny because it was this, the guy was like, he was talking to Americans. He's like, I got this concept for you. I want you to try to grasp this. And it was, don't buy stuff that you can't afford. I mean, if you don't have the money, don't buy it. And like the people would come back and they would say, so let me get this straight. Let me get it straight here. So if I want to buy something, but I don't have enough money to afford it, then I don't buy it. And he was like, right, exactly. Oh, I think I get this. And they were trying to understand the whole concept of don't spend money you don't have. But, it's interesting to think of what the president would want to rename the debt ceiling, because, of course, that's precisely what it is, supposedly, right? A ceiling on the debt, meaning that you can't have more debt than the ceiling. So if you hit the ceiling, you have to stop borrowing and you finally have to start paying your bills, right? But the president, in very Orwellian fashion, describes paying your bills as racking up more debt, and deciding not to rack up more debt as not paying your bills. I mean, it's the precise opposite. It's like saying white is black or black is white, and the media swallows it. Oh, white must be black because the president said so. Instead of saying, hey, the president's a liar. Look at the president lying. Maybe if somebody tried to call him a liar, they would say, oh, you must be a racist then, right? You're calling him a liar because he's black. No, I'm calling him a liar because he's lying. That's why he's a liar. Got nothing to do with his race. It has to do with the words that he's speaking. Because again, if he's not lying, he's an imbecile. So which is it? Which one of these people is our president? Did we elect a liar or did we elect an imbecile? Because again, it's one or the other. Because it's very simple stuff. I mean, it'd be hard for somebody not to understand that raising the debt ceiling raises the debt. But Obama says, no, raising the debt ceiling doesn't raise the debt. I say, so President Obama, if we raise the debt ceiling, will the debt go up or will it remain the same? Well, it will go up. If we don't raise the debt ceiling, what happens to the debt? It doesn't go up. So raising the debt ceiling raises the debt. It's real basic stuff, right? Everybody should be able to understand it. But maybe if anybody else can think of a good name for what the president would like to call the debt ceiling, or maybe what we should call the debt ceiling, because it's really a measure of how much we're all screwed, right? How broke we are. But yeah, maybe there is a more appropriate term for just a debt ceiling, because it really isn't a ceiling, again, because they keep raising it. So it's not really a debt ceiling. It's just a debt measurement, right? It's something that we raise whenever we get near it. So what is there a word for that? a ceiling that always goes up, ever increasing sky. Maybe it should just be called, hey, the sky's the limit. The ceiling means nothing. The transparent ceiling.